What's up, college football addicts? Now, on Sunday, Josh Pate doubled down on his realignment take from last week. He recorded a podcast in audio only, and so a lot of people didn't hear that. I did a video on it on our Florida State only channel, but he brought back and brought out a lot of us crazed lunatics who eat this stuff up like your kid's Halloween candy. Now, I know you've seen what Pate said, but just in case you haven't, I'll give you a 45-second rundown. You can skip ahead if you watched his show. As a quick reminder, he said a bomb is going to go off in regards to conference realignment in July. He doesn't know how. He honestly doesn't care how, but he knows that it's going down. He said he actually doesn't think anyone else knows exactly how it's going to go down. He said there might be some people on this side that know how their part will go down, and there might be some people on this side that know how their parts will go down, but nobody has a full, crystal clear picture. He talked about how news broke 3 years ago during SEC media days, and he kind of made some allusions to that, some maybe illustrations that might be something similar that happened this year. He said Josh is confident that Florida State is out, and he also said it will be much more than just Florida State. He disagreed with Feinbaum, saying that Florida State's not a Big Ten fit. I'll talk about that more in a minute. And then he reiterated at the end that he wasn't sure of when it would happen, but that he thinks it'll be July. Now, there's a whole lot to unpack there, and you should certainly go and watch his video on it. It's on his YouTube channel. It's the last video with a Florida State logo on it. But I do want to talk to you guys about two things in it. Number one, before we get started, though, thank you for joining us. It might be your first time. You might have been here for months watching our content. Either way, thank you a ton. I love doing this, and I do appreciate all of you. Even the folks that don't agree with me, that's fine. We don't have to agree. Number two, most of the time when we do realignment content, we start all the way from the beginning. We walk you through a ton of steps. We're not doing that today. This is going to be a quicker one. If you need a more full picture of anything and everything going on, I'll link a playlist at the end that you can check out and get caught up. Now, here's what I'll say about Pate. And you can either love him or hate him for whatever reasons. None of that matters. But in my opinion, he's not one that's going to stick his neck out there and be wrong just for the heck of it. He's very calculated. He's very methodical. He doesn't make predictions like this a ton. And I think that proves something. It proves that what we've been saying for over a year and a half is real. We've always had, before the 8/15 deadline, at the forefront. What is that 8/15 deadline? Well, it's when Florida State and others, any ACC team, would have to let the ACC know that they don't intend to compete in the upcoming year's school year, right? The 8/15 in 2024 would be for the 2025-26 school year. In fact, you can pull the clips from the first couple of conference realignment videos that I did after Florida State's very first epic Board of Trustees meeting, and people were asking if things could happen before that August deadline, 2023's. And I said, no, it would be this one. Now, I will tell you this. We'll own this. We did mention the June 30th deadline, which has obviously come and passed, and we thought there was a really good chance that Florida State would announce that either them and Clemson or them and others would trigger the composition clause. Never said it was a sure thing, but we did say that it was likely, and clearly it did not happen. I'll 100% own that. I'm not sure if it was a fact of Clemson not being ready or both teams just not wanting to go that route of triggering that composition clause, but that date has come and passed, and we'll own it. We said that there was a good chance it would happen, and that didn't happen. But now we move on, and back to the original date that we've always mentioned as the most likely scenario. In fact, now, though, it's not just some guy sitting in his office telling you that Florida State and Clemson are going to pull triggers before the August 15th deadline. It's now the biggest voice in college football media telling you that. And the two big takeaways from Pate are as follows. And stick around, because then I'll roast Feinbaum a little bit at the end. But the biggest thing that he said to me is that it's not just Florida State. More teams. He mentioned three specifically: Clemson, North Carolina, Miami. And you'd say, yeah, those are certainly the three biggest brands other than Florida State in the conference. Those are certainly the teams that it would make the most sense for them to get out. I know that Virginia is tossed around some, and maybe you'd have them number 5. He just didn't specifically mention them. But I do think that Clemson and maybe North Carolina, maybe Miami, maybe those are down the road a little bit, but I do think this is going to be more teams. I think it's more than just Florida State. He said Florida State is the face of it, but there are others coming with us. I think Clemson is pretty in lockstep with what Florida State's doing right now. I think Clemson, no one would be shocked if Clemson did something around or on the same date that Florida State did something. Maybe Clemson's the leader here. Maybe Clemson does something first and then Florida State follows. I don't necessarily think so, but I don't have any information to say that either way is going to be the way it goes down. But who's going to be number 3? Is that Miami? Is that North Carolina? Could that be a surprise team? Could that be a Virginia? Could that be someone else that we're not expecting? I'm not sure. I don't have context at Miami or North Carolina or Virginia like that. I do have some good connections at Clemson. I obviously have good connections at Florida State, but I'm not sure on team number 3. I don't have a crystal clear picture on that, but Pate seemed pretty confident that more teams would be going. And it'll be interesting to see if more teams go and blow this thing up before they've even sued. Obviously, the only 2 teams that have sued for their rights back are Florida State and Clemson. But more teams is what stuck out to me the most. This has been built as a Florida State battle, a Florida State thing. Florida State's doing all this. Clemson shortly behind. But then there are more teams. There's more of this going on that nobody is expecting. The other thing that I think that stuck out the most was that Pate said everything he said, and then at the very end he said, I don't know this for certain, but this is what my gut says. This is my hunch. I had a friend reach out to me and say, hey, I think this is his way of covering his butt. And I responded that I think it is, but not in the way that he thinks it is. When people say, I'm hearing this, or based on speculation, etc., things like that, they're protecting themselves. They're CYA, right? In case they're wrong. And I think Pate was doing this, but he was doing it not because he might be wrong, but because he knows he's right. He doesn't want to present it as a solidified, factual happening because he wants to cover for the people that told him what's going on, the legal contacts that he has, the folks who are close to the situation. He didn't mention these guys specifically, but the McMurphys and the Dellingers and the others who will invariably break the news that we've been telling you for over a year. I think he knows that it's happening in July. I would be willing to bet anything that he is absolutely correct about this, but that he just doesn't want to present it as, I'm the one that told you. This is just my hunch. I just think that this might happen. You ever do that with your kids? You ever tell them, if it rains today, then we're going to have a movie night, knowing full well that you've checked the weather and there's a 98% chance that it rains in the next 15 minutes. Well, I think that Pate's doing this too. He knows the figurative cake has been baked, and now he's just waiting on that cake to be pulled out of the oven. How about Paul Feinbaum? Feinbaum said Florida State wasn't a fit for the Big Ten, and Pate, very rightfully so, slammed him on this, seemed to grab him by both abnormally large ears and throw him down on the mat, which was hilarious. Feinbaum is a noted flip-flopper, and I mentioned this on the other channel, but in May of last year, he said that Florida State had pulled ahead of Clemson, and they were obviously the most attractive ACC team out there. Right after the Board of Trustees meeting in July, he said that Clemson and FSU were the most 2 likely teams to end up in the SEC, and were obviously the most attractive. When he talked about championships, competing and recruiting at a high level, good coaches, etc., he said no better 2 fits. But then a few weeks later, mid-September, he changed his tune and said they sounded like a bunch of whiners and that nobody wanted them. Since then, he said they're not a fit for the SEC, and now he says they're not a fit in the Big Ten. All of this to say, we'll see. But Feinbaum has no true information, and I'm glad somebody like Pate slapped him down, and it wasn't just, again, TJ, the crazed conference realignment guy. It was somebody who is a massive voice in the media world around our favorite sport. Pate talked about how academics were not necessarily at the forefront of what's being decided right now, though that was Paul Feinbaum's outdated reference for saying that the Seminoles were not a good fit in the Big Ten. I'm not sure if Feinbaum's still upset about 2013 or what his situation is, but I am glad that Pate slapped him down. And so all of this to say, do you think that Josh Pate is right? Do you think that something happens with Florida State, possibly Clemson, possibly others, in the month of July? the month that we're currently in right now. ACC Media Day is coming up. Big Ten Media Day is coming up. SEC Media Day is coming up. Big 12 as well. All of these things coming to a head, all of these things about to happen. Will we get an announcement out of any of them? Will any news be broken while any of them are going on? I'm not sure about you, but I am waiting on pins and needles because I think so. And I'm not going to tell you I think it's on this date, and I think it's like it's like the old people that were trying to predict the rapture. Oh, this is when Jesus is coming. Listen, I can't do that. But I'm telling you, I agree with Pate. I've always agreed with Pate. It'll end up being on August 2nd just because, I like to be wrong. That way you guys can point it out and say, oh, you said July, and it was really 2 days later, 48 hours later than you said. See how stupid you are. But I think it'll be before that August 15th deadline, and I think Pate knows what he's talking about. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. I'd love to hear your comments. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree? Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think Pate's right? Do you think he's wrong? When do you think an announcement is made that Florida State's getting up and walking away from the table? Doesn't mean they'll be out. They'll play this year. Who knows when they'll actually be out, but do you think the announcement comes down within the next month or so? I think yes. I want to hear from you down in the comments. If you have missed any of our realignment content, we've explained all of this in great detail. You can click the playlist on the screen right now if you want to get caught up and you want to binge watch hours of me explaining how all of this is and is likely to go down. Thank you guys for watching College Football Addiction.